Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Dynasty Dingers podcast. It is June 3rd. It is Monday, so we will be releasing on Tuesday as always. Doc is with me. We have a nice guest with us as well. Another week, another guest. But first, I want to welcome in Doc. Doc, what is going on, brother?
What's going on, man? I'm just being professional. Just like moving things around, hitting the mute, unmuting. I got this beautiful. I was trying to figure out what kind of cigar this is. This is so good, man. This is Rocky Patel, the Edge, but I don't know which one. Anyway, I got these like cruddy, cheap cigars for like a good deal, like 30 of them. I was like, yeah, I'll start saving some money this way, so I don't just blow all my savings on premium cigars all the time, and they just weren't the same. So I
It's
went out
funny.
and blew a bunch of money on premium cigars again.
We did a cigar table at the wedding last year, and I definitely didn't do a good job at the wedding of like A, being mindful of time, and B, really like, being mindful of anything. So by the time I knew it, the wedding was over and I had not been able to partake. So the guy gives me this bag of cigars that I still have yet to smoke, but it has gone with me to Greece. It has gone with me to New York. It has gone with me to California. And now it's here with me in Las Vegas. So the cigars are well traveled. They just haven't been smoked yet. So
Come to
I will
Indiana,
hopefully.
they will mysteriously disappear.
I was going to say I might just end up giving them to you. But Doc, we have a guest yet again, another Scout the Stat Line member, newer Scout the Stat Line member. This is an individual that comes to us, I want to say 2 weeks ago. His name is Owen. He also works with the AA Missions, which is the AA affiliate of the Padres. I wanted to bring Owen on in now, kind of break down what's going on in your life, Owen, and kind of how you found your way to Scout the Stat Line.
Yeah, it actually just happened by pure chance. Ross gave me a follow back. I shot him a DM on X. I had kind of read a good amount of the Scout the Stat Line articles up to that point. I was pretty familiar with some of the pieces, some of the writers. I'd been following Doc for a bit up to that point, and I kind of just floated the idea to him. I'd love to be a part of this. I'd love to write and I'd love to contribute in any way I can. And he said, we'd love to have you. Kind of sent me the Slack the next day, and it was just kind of lift off from there.
I love that. Doc, I think it is funny now that we've had Owen on, we've had Ryan on, we've had Lewis on. We have yet to have the actual creator of Scout the Stat Line on the podcast. Maybe next week.
It's
But
looking
that
like
is,
next week, folks. I think
yeah.
Ross is going to be appearing on RotoWire this week. What a big doggy dog.
Coming
Oh, okay.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
I told Scott White he has to have me on. He said, "Haha."
That's all he said to you is,
no,
haha.
he got it's just like one of those. But no, I just basically said I'm gonna come on there and smoke a cigar. I told him, I didn't ask. I said I'm smoking a cigar on your show one day. We'll see what CBS has to think about that.
I was going to say they might have to run it through legal first.
Yeah, I think that might be the bigger problem.
And would it be legal through even CBS or would it be through Paramount or
Well, it
who
depends
owns
if you consider me,
Paramount?
am I advertising cigars or not? In which case, Rocky Patel is just like, you gotta say, oh man, this sucks. Gosh,
This is what we'll do. We won't even ask for sponsorship. We'll just start rolling out sponsorship every single week and then ask them after the fact to see if they want to pay us.
Sure.
Okay, Owen, let's get back on track here. You have some very exciting experience, more so than anything I have in the baseball world. At least and I know you've spent some time with the AA Missions, and I know that you're presumably going back this year or currently working with them. I just kind of wanted you to give us the backstory on that and what you're currently doing for the AA affiliate.
Yeah, so I actually heard about the job through a connection my mom had with one of the owners of the team. Uh, he wrote me a letter of referral. I applied for the job. I worked for the game operations crew last year. It was helping with all the in-game events, sponsorships, promotions. Um, they do like a 10Ks for breakfast from Whataburger type thing, Texas fast food chain. If the missions pitchers strike out 10 guys, we kind of hand out free Whataburger to everyone. So it's kind of helping with that. There were kind of the Bill Miller animal races. I would dress up in one of those and run around the warning track. Uh, so yeah, in brief, a lot of the sponsorships and kind of promotional stuff. Now I work in guest services.
Slow down.
Nice.
Let's talk about the race, but brother, you skipped over you just yada over the best part. Yeah. It's a Seinfeld
Yeah.
reference for our Zoomer listeners out there.
I mean, Seinfeld's on streaming services. Owen, have you seen
Dude.
Seinfeld?
I would not have guessed the reference, honestly.
Okay.
The Zoomers,
Okay.
baby, I'm telling you.
You've got time. You've got plenty of time ahead of you for downtime to like just happily stumble upon Seinfeld and enjoy it. But maybe down the road.
Yeah, I'm sure I will at some point.
Was it sweaty in those suits? So is it hard? It
Yes,
looks like it'd be hard.
absolutely. So the costumes themselves, they're actually inflatable costumes. So the feeling of
Oh
it,
my god.
it's kind of like you put it on and it's like deflated. So the stuff, it kind of sticks to your skin a little bit, and then there's like a little you plug it in. There's like a fan that kind of turns on and inflates the inside of the costume. So, but yes, they absolutely were sweaty, especially in the Texas heat in July and August when it's around 100 to 105 degrees when we're running in those costumes. Yes, you just pull it off and you'd be like, I cannot wait to get this off.
And I just want to say, folks at home, I'm excited for Owen here, not just because he's part of the Indiana Hoosier takeover of Scout the Stat Line. I'm also hailing from Indiana these days. But also, Ross has talked about bringing other people on board, and I was just like, that guy, I don't know. What's he, come on, let's see his writing. He doesn't want to show his writing. What the heck's going on? And then, the second I heard Owen I just saw him pop up in the Slack, actually. I didn't even hear about it. Just he was there. And I was like, yes, no. We got a winner here. So Scout the Stat Line, folks. If you're just listening to our podcast, that's cool. But $5 a month, baby, you're going to be getting just better and better content. This is the ground floor.
You can read my article. You can read my articles for free. Those are you don't even have to pay for those.
Yeah, well, once we get your view share up, we're going to have to change that, Owen.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I also wanted to have you kind of just run down. You've taken this step in having opportunities to be within the baseball affiliate. Shifted obviously the experience, what you're doing from year to year. What are you looking at long term? Is baseball something that you want to make a career out of, or are you going to try and keep it as more of a hobby?
Absolutely, and I would go as far as to say is that baseball is the only industry that I want to make a career out of. I think the long-term goal for me would be either in an MLB front office or as an agent.
Okay. And I know you're going to school. What are
Yes.
you focused on? What's your major going to be?
Yeah, so I'm a pre-business student. I'm looking to
Okay.
transfer into the Kelly School of Business, and finance or accounting are really kind of what I've narrowed down to.
So
Listen,
go on,
Doc,
go on.
I want him to get this this front office job just so that we can say we have a buddy in the front office. And I will do everything I can, which is basically nothing to help you with that, but I'm rooting for you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was just gonna add or ask you. So if you're a baseball guy, by the way, Matt and I are both in our early 30s. So you're kind of like I don't know about Matt, but you're doing one like, oh man, I wish I was like baseball minded back then. I wasn't. I'm kind of like I was playing fantasy baseball back then, but I didn't have the same drive I do now, and I got this family and everything. It's fun, but it's like, oh, what could have been? So keep on grinding, buddy.
I
Do
appreciate that.
see how far you can get. And my question would be, do you try to balance the stat formula side of scouting analysis, or do you kind of lean on some traditional live look scouting as well? How does that work for you?
So I do enjoy going to games, so I do kind of enjoy the on-site stuff, kind of seeing it firsthand. But I will say a lot of kind of what I do is kind of I hear about a player or just kind of start watching, and just that kind of gets my interest. Kind of dig into some stat pages online. But I try and keep it a little bit of both. I still enjoy going out to the game, seeing the players in person. I kind of I like the environment, so. I guess it's good to just do a bit of both.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had our one of our founders getting a little bit of a Twitter tiff this week. Doc, did you see this? The interaction on Twitter this week between
Well,
Ross and
Was
some
it
other people.
what was it Ross and I saw the Ross and Eric Cross
Yeah,
one that was
that's the one
about.
that's
Okay.
the one I'm
I guess
referring to.
I guess
I
I
did
missed
see
it.
that.
I missed it. Okay,
So
I'm
I'm not gonna dramify. What I'm just gonna say is that we are all entitled to do this how we want to do this, right? Like, Owen, you just said it. Like, we all look at the stat line, right? Like, if we
Yeah.
can pull up some videos on Twitter, or we can be at a game. Like, I think you being at the Missions, AA Park, like you'll be able to get to see some of these guys take swings. Sometimes you'll be able to get to see Snelling here and there. Go out and pitch and look at the mechanics. But like the
Yeah.
reality is, I work nights. When I get off, I'm looking through Twitter and I'm like, okay, what do you guys do today? I'm looking at box scores. I'm looking at stat lines, right? And like
Yeah.
that's the main thing that Scout the Stat Line does. But there is balance. There's always been balance. And I think the first name that comes to mind, and this is kind of off our outline, but I wanted to get both of your opinions based off what you just said, is Lazaro Montez this season. You know, the stat line is amazing. He's hitting home runs. They're prodigious. We know the power's there. Personally, when I see him every single video, the swing concerns the hell out of me. It looks like he's out of balance. It looks like he's not following through. It looks like every time he hits the ball 400 feet, should have gone 20. Now, I'll start with Owen. Is that something that you'll go on Twitter or you'll go on YouTube and look at as well and get concerned about, or is that something that maybe you let to play out until we get to the higher levels when video quality is better, or you can get a live look?
Yeah, so to address he does have the a kind of an unorthodox swing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really concern me because the results are there. You look, his EVs are insane. His approach this season has gotten a lot better. He's striking out less. He's walking more. I believe leading. I believe it's California League, is it, in RBIs?
That sounds. I mean, that sounds right.
Yeah,
All I know of the single A affiliate is
yeah.
that there are a load of prospects there with Emerson, and you actually wrote about one, I think, just recently for the player highlights. Did you not? Loper, not Loperfido. That's Astros. Who was the first round pick they took this past year? You wrote about
Oh my God, not
Farmello.
yes, yeah, Farmello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Farmelo's there as well. I mean, the whole team is loaded. It's
yeah,
truly incredible. Like that's an organization that if I were maybe in my younger years, I would love to work for it because the entire lineup is just
yeah.
stacked.
It just absolutely top to bottom, and that's not even getting into some of the sleeper guys. I really like
Yeah.
Aiden Smith. Like absolutely
Mhm.
love the
Yeah.
power, love his swing. I mean, I really think he's gonna be a great big leaguer, but it's like it's not even kind of the top of the lineup. You go 1 through 9 in that order, and you've got a potential future impact big leaguer there.
Yeah. Now, I want you guys, well, Doc, first jump in real quick and talk about, just what we brought up about Lazaro Montez, and then we'll get into Aiden Smith here.
So, yeah, Montez. He first of all, great name. You know, Lazaro. I think there's something we got to work on with that. That's just a really cool Lazaro Montez. Are you? So you mean like when he's going back with his swing, he kind of goes back. He's got it here, kind of, and then he goes almost like he goes
It's like
back
he
a little. And
for me, it's like he's almost jumping when he swings, and I don't know how to articulate it properly.
yeah,
It's
I'm
just
not.
when
I'm
you
not.
see when you
Mhm.
see when you see superstars make contact and drive through the ball and have great exit velos, it's all almost a perfect mechanical mechanism, right? It's all the way through. When you see Lazaro make an incredible contact or hit a home run, I'm just like, did I just see him jump half a foot in the air to make contact with that ball? It's there's just something to it that has concerned me since last year. But and you're right. I mean, he's incredible. The stat
Yeah,
line is incredible.
I'd be way more concerned if his like numbers weren't getting
Mm,
better. Like they're getting better.
yeah,
This actually in May, I think he's almost got a 500 OBP now. If this was like a 5, 8, 160 kind of guy, and he was getting, he was somehow popping oppo home runs after like jumping into it. Some weird. If there was something weird like that going on, then okay. But we're talking about a
Yeah.
monster of a man. He's a big dude, and the production is just so strong. I'm kind of a proponent of, like, I'm not really a swing analysis kind of guy. That's above my pay grade. I'd love to, probably be good to learn a little bit more about it. I certainly notice when things look a little funny. For example, with Chase DeLauder, that was the big thing, right? It's interesting. So everyone wanted to have all this hysteria over DeLauder's swing. Meanwhile, he was cranking home runs like crazy. Turns out we should have been looking at his upper body. They were looking at. They should have been looking at his feet, because his legs, they can't stay healthy right now, which is the real problem. So, as long as you're producing, staying on the field, and getting it done, I don't believe Mike Trout has the most conventional swing either. Seemed to be okay for him. Again, other problems, not the
Yeah.
swing.
And
yeah.
maybe it's just me, but the stance itself, it reminds me a lot of JD Martinez. Having watched him for years just on the Red Sox, that's who the stance really reminds me of. Maybe not the complete motion itself, but you look at him in the batter's box and it almost looks like JD Martinez, albeit from the other side of the plate.
Well, and I don't know if you remember this, but JD Martinez, when he left Houston, had a swing coach that completely reworked his swing. I want to say JD was probably 26, 27 when he left Houston.
He's DFA,
Didn't do
DFA'd by
much.
Houston, I believe.
Was he DFA'd? Yeah, I
Yeah,
know that. Yeah, he had left, but that swing coach. So you're probably familiar. Completely reworked his swing and turned him into what was. It's about now what 10 years. 10 years of being a all-star level player.
yeah,
Um, and it is a little. It's still a little unorthodox, but the
yeah.
results year in year out continue to be there. So you brought up Aiden Smith. I want you both to talk a little bit about Aiden Smith. It's a name that's kind of been getting a little buzzier and buzzier as the month of May went on. Oh, and I want you to kick it off since you brought him up. What excites you, and maybe what are your future projections for Aiden Smith?
What excites me about him is we know the raw power's there. He's also hitting pretty well for average. There's nothing too alarming about the approach yet. I can definitely see him as a middle of the order type guy, cleanup hitter is definitely kind of what I see for him. He's won't blow you off the charts with his speed. I do think he could go double digit stolen bases though. Um, but yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite sleeper prospects in their system, and I do think he's going to be a future impact middle of the order bat.
Doc, what do you have on Aiden Smith?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking over here at MLB.com and their scouting grades on him. They got him as a 60 grade run. Yeah, so they think he's pretty fast. That's something
Yeah.
that makes sense. If you look at his stat line right now, he's 19 years old at A ball with 13 stolen bases in 43 games. Multiply that by roughly 4 over, MLB regular season. Oh, whoa, you can dream, right? And the power is already flashing, which you don't always see happen right away. I actually, again, if you look at their, at the MLB scouting report, that was one of the big tip offs early for me. They don't always do the best. MLB.com, sometimes we like to rip on them for maybe their top 100 rankings and where people are and all that. But I will say there's something to be said for on the ground top tier scouts. And sometimes they really do have a couple bits of insight that the stat line doesn't always reveal. And, apparently he was touted as one of these, they were on the ground, and word on the ground was he was one of the best pure hitters out of Texas high schoolers, which is pretty competitive, right? And so actually, I was going into this thinking he's a hit tool guy first, and he's kind of proven that this year in terms of like his approach. He's taking a bunch of walks. It's great.
Yeah.
And to see that power flashing too out of a pretty solid frame, kind of your ideal baseball frame, looking like 6'2", 6'3", almost 200 pounds, probably gets there with some maturity. Yeah, it's an exciting prospect.
I was actually going to bring up the approach too. Another thing I noticed is that he's also hitting the ball more in the air too. And at such a young age, like this is encouraging. His fly ball percentage is up to 44.3% from 39.4% last year, and he's also hitting the ball on the ground significantly less. He's got a 32.1% ground ball rate, down from 48.5% last year. So I think it's those little things too that you also like in him that kind of you don't really see that on paper, but I mean that's really encouraging to see from someone of his age, and especially with I'd say at least 2 years away from the majors.
Yeah, and another name that comes from this incredible organization and this past draft. I mean, you look at what they did last year with the high school selections. Cole Emerson first, 22nd overall, signed for just slightly over pick value, which was about 300,000 over pick value. Vermello coming in 29th overall as the rewarded pick for Julio Rodriguez winning Rookie of the Year. Ty Pete coming 30th overall as a compensation pick. You have Ben Williamson, who has not been getting a lot of notoriety. But then you jump down to Aiden Smith down at fourth round, 124. Signing bonus was 1.2 million. Pick value is 531,300. So they went over slot really to bring him in and put him with the Modesto Nuts, which you were correct to own. That is California League. Good job with that. Just an incredible draft class. They could look back in years in the Seattle organization and really, really look at this class as what kind of put them over the top. Already having Lazaro Montes, having Faustin Selston in the organization, like what they're building is really great, but this class alone may have solidified it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on that.
It's highly unlikely they keep kind of all the guys they have now. I do think you look at where they're at now, top the AL West, best pitching staff in the league by far. They've got all those guys under control through 2027 or beyond. You can plug just any one of them into the Cy Young conversation right now. It's kind of the bats that they need. And I just don't, there's just a part of me that's like they're just not going to waste a staff this good because their offense could not get the job done.
Yeah.
Outside of Julio Rodriguez, who's slumping right now, their best hitter is Luke Raley, and it's like you just can't roll out with that. You're not the division could be. It looks like it could be theirs for the taking. The Astros have taken a step back. The Rangers don't look so mighty as they used to. So I mean, I really think that they're going to be aggressive at the deadline. They're going to make a move for an impact bat that's going to help them try and run away with this division, advance further into the playoffs. And I do think that some of their prospects are going to come at the cost of that. It's just a matter of who's expendable and kind of who they view highly, because as you said, as what's been touched on previously, MLB's rankings are really far from the most telling of kind of how an organization views their prospects.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you said a good name off the air. Vladimir Guerrero could be a great target, and I said off air, I just don't. I have a hard time. It's so funny. Like when I look at these prospects, I'm like, I don't know how many of these guys are going to be wearing a Mariners uniform. And frankly, for the hitters, I don't really want them to. It's kind of not a great part for hitters. So I would be so excited if a guy like, any of these guys, Cole Young, Colt Emerson, Aiden Smith, what if they end up in Cincinnati like the other Mariners, right? Now you're in a bandbox. Oh, baby, now we're talking.
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about the Modesto Nuts, but as you had said, Doc, Owen, you brought up Ford. You just brought up Cole Young, Doc. Like this system is so deep, and that infield in general is deep as well. We're starting to see the outfield kind of get some depth. Smith, right, for Mello. Okay, we have spent a lot of time on the Mariners. That is my fault. I will take responsibility. But we have a couple players that we want to highlight this week. And Owen, you were very excited about a player that I have been excited about for a number of years, and I am about to give up on. He's going to be your weekly highlight. That's going to be Reed Detmers. So go ahead and just give us the rundown on Reed Detmers.
Yeah. So I think it really goes without saying. It's almost like the ultimate downfall for him. I think through his first 5-6 starts, we were talking this guy. There's no other AL Cy Young frontrunner. Since then, 9.49 ERA. He's been option to AAA. His barrel rate's been up significantly on the season. His home run fly ball rate is up. He's just been almost, and I hate to say this because I have him on a couple fantasy teams I'm in. He's been just batting practice for really opposing teams. So I do think this was written, and this is kind of just the sad reality of it. And in redraft leagues, I'm out here. I need to see just some more of a positive trajectory. But dynasty leagues, I'm still holding on to him here. And I mentioned this last season. He pitched to a 4.48 ERA, 4.55 expected ERA. This season, he's actually been somewhat unlucky. He's got, I think it's like a 5.5 ERA on the season. I could be wrong there. But his expected ERA is 3.56. His xFIP is also lower. It's 3.24. His expected batting average is 2.26, which is 30 points lower than last year. His ground ball percentage is actually higher, so is his whiff rate. So I'm intrigued here because last season he was about the pitcher that he was statistically expected to be. But this season, you look at some of the underlying numbers and you're like, really wasn't this bad, or at least should not have been as bad as he was. So in Dynasty, yes, I'm still very intrigued. He's still 24 years old. I'm not sure if a trade is on the horizon. I don't think so, but hopefully the option is going to be the reset he needs.
Yeah, this was a player that was rushed, much like a lot of their first-round picks, coming out of Louisville the same year that Bobby Miller was taken out of Louisville by the Dodgers because of having Ohtani and needing to compete. I think that, that process of being rushed and pushing him through development because he was a strikeout first pitcher, having success, especially at AA, probably stunted his growth like we've seen with a lot of the players currently with the Angels organization. So you said trade. Hopefully, from my perspective, that does happen. I would love to see Detmer somewhere else. Maybe have a change up in regards to coaching staff, pitching coach, really kind of get him to have the full potential he could.
I agree. And I'm not saying I hope a trade doesn't happen. I think a trade would be really best for his value and his production. It's just, he's a controllable piece for them. They could view him as a long-term as a long term rotation staple. It's just I think you mentioned their draft classes too. These past 2, 3 draft classes, Zach Neto, Sean Well, Detmers have all been guys that they can rush to the majors, and it's an organizational failure. I don't really think there's another way to put
Yeah.
it. None of these guys are performing how you'd expect them to at their draft position. Sean Well hasn't taken that breakout year. Neto has been an average, maybe MLB shortstop, and then you look at Detmers, who's already back in AAA. I mean, it's just not working. Hopefully they'll drastically change how they draft and develop, but this is just one of their many failures on full display.
Yeah, Doc, what is your take on Detmers? Is this a player that you'd like to be targeting right now? Is this a guy that you've been keeping your eye on for potential acquisition in dynasty leagues?
So I actually have a move I made just this past week, which is kind of it's great timing, but not the best timing. See, I was really busy. I was on the road. I was doing so many things earlier this year. I had him in 30 man. I acquired him for really cheap in the offseason. I think it was like Anthony Disclafani before the injury, and like a third rounder or something like that got me Detmers because his salary was kind of high. It was like a pretty good deal, and returns early on. I'm loving it. If I was sitting around, I had a stacked pitching staff. My bats aren't that great in the 30 man. They're a work in progress, and I really wish I capitalized on that early season value. That said, I guess I got the next best thing because I traded him just before he got optioned to AAA. I got him kind of a buy low for buy low because Nootbaar got out. He's out for probably a month, 3 weeks to a month now with his oblique injuries are no joke for hitters, and so it was Detmers and Bryce Eldridge. I loathe to let go, but I got for those two Lars Nootbaar, who I'm a huge believer in, and Cole Young, who we just talked about. So that's a nice little haul. I think Cole Young's a safer MLB. I think he'll be really good in the MLB. Hit tool first, fast enough. Like I said, get him out of Seattle. I like him even more because some people have talked about some sneaky power. Frankly, it'll be. I think he's going to have a good career. And Nootbaar, the trick with Nootbaar is he's going to have to just stay healthy. He's like smashes the daylights out of the ball. He's so fun to watch too. But Reed Detmers, I don't know if you can tell from the way I'm talking. I've talked about how I like everyone except for Reed Detmers in this deal. I just, man, the potential is there. The talent is there. I think Owen basically got it right. The development is just not great with the Angels organization. Something major has to be done. What's going to happen to Nelson Rada without going into a tangent on him? It's like he's 18. What is he going to debut this year? Like what's happening? He's already at AA. They're a crazy organization. I'm glad I'm not a diehard fan. Mr. Detmers is only 24 years old, and that's a great thing because sometimes pitchers, they need that. They come out of nowhere, quote unquote, 27, 28, 29 years old even, and that might be on another team for Reed Detmers.
Well, and he's a lefty, and I've always taken the approach, and this is the very old man scouting approach of lefties take longer than righties. I like to see a lefty take a little bit of time, really develop that secondary off-speed pitch in the major leagues. I think we saw what Skubal did coming back from the flexor strain surgery. And, he falls right in line with that 26, 27 age range. He was a dominant strikeout pitcher, I think even more so than Detmers was in the minor leagues. But I like Detmers a few years from now for every reason that you said, Owen. And I actually like the fact that he was optioned today. Doc, I'm glad you brought that up. I missed that. I did not see that. To me, that means he's even more acquirable in Dynasty. If you have guys that have stacked minor league rosters, you might be able to go out and get him since he's a negative hit now on the major league roster. I'm targeting right after we get off today.
He is, and I think there's a lot of teams in contention that'll kind of view that option, and it's like, oh, he could be down for a while. Maybe they'll be more kind of willing to let go of him. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't have done bad had I sold high on him after the first few starts, but I really like his stuff, and I think there's a lot of reason for optimism. So yeah, of course it's especially when I'm kind of second in my division, still trying to contend. Having him and Torkelson, who I also got optioned. So it was.
By the way, I also have Torkelson. Yes, Unity.
It was not a good weekend for me in terms of guys taking up MLB spots, getting options.
Well, and not good for them either, right?
Of course not. But what about my fantasy team?
Yeah. Well, but listen, we're gonna move on to Mark Vientos here in a minute, Doc. But I'm proud of both of these teams for doing what's necessary for the Tigers. This is a long time coming. We need to see a reset on Torkelson, a guy coming out of ASU that was touted as a can't miss, right? As a very safe pick. And Torkelson's been anything but that in his, 2-ish years in the major leagues that we've seen him. And then Detmer, same thing. Doc, kind of talked about the mass potential. Owen, you said it with the numbers too, the expected numbers. We just haven't seen it yet. So both organizations trying to hit that reset button. Doc, talking about the reset button, Mark Vientos has gotten that a number of times himself. He is now back in the major leagues. He is your player highlight of the week. Go ahead and talk about Vientos.
Man, so it's such a nice thing. It's like I'm hoping this is the anti Joe Adell experience for me. I missed the boat on early Joe Adell. So everyone else was scarred heading into this year. So I got to pick him up basically anywhere where I got to get him in a bunch of leagues where, normally some hyped prospects they're not available. Not a 30, not a 20 teamer. He wouldn't have been available there. But anyway, so I was super high on Adell, and now he's revealing to me why I can never trust him again. And so Mark Vientos, though, this is a guy where he hasn't been on such a roller coaster ride because, frankly, the Mets haven't given him the most opportunity. I mean, he got 200 at bats last year in the majors, but I feel like it was really sporadic. They didn't fully trust him. They had him like Daniel Vogelback working in with him. It's like, I don't know. It was an awkward situation. And now this year, what got me is I was kind of reading the tea leaves. Mets fans, wherever I saw in the last week, as Owen said earlier, I think maybe it was off the podcast, I don't recall, but essentially there was some rumblings before Beatty was even sent down that Vientos was going to start getting more at bats because I noticed he was playing a bunch and apparently he was doing well against righties. I called it. I said, "Go get him." And then the next day, I think they started sitting him again for like 2 or 3 straight games. And I was like, I hate the Mets so much. And it looked like for a second maybe we got, faked out again. But no, Beatty sent down. Mark Vientos is a full steam ahead guy right now. So the deal is, folks, if you haven't been paying attention, he has been short side platooning, which is not acceptable normally for fantasy, right? You can accept a guy who can hit righties because essentially two-thirds at roughly of the guys you're going to be facing are going to be right-handed. So that's okay, But when it's, they're only playing every so often against lefties, it sucks. So Vientos is starting to get the green light, and tonight he just hit another home run. He has actually walked twice as well. So you're seeing just him absolutely, and he got another home run 2 days ago. He's doing great so far. His Savant page is bright red. Every kind of crazy number you can imagine there. Bat speed's actually really high too, which is exciting. Yeah, he's just barreling the ball up. Apparently, this is crazy. I mean, it's a lot of these he doesn't technically qualify for yet because it's so early, and this means it could change. But apparently, his launch angle has been actually kind of not great, but he's still hitting home runs. That's exciting. This is a guy who hits the ball really hard. They're going to give him the chance to run with a job, and he's delivering so far. I've got him wherever I wanted him basically lately, and I hope you did too because if you're listening on Tuesday, he's probably not available anymore. He gone, yeah.
Yeah. Owen, I wanted you to jump in here in a minute. Only thing I'll add is in 2021, 2022, we looked at the profile of Vientos at age 21, age 22, coming off a 25 home run season between Double and AAA in 21, and then a 24 home run season at AAA, getting promoted at the end of 2022. I got to see him in Milwaukee, and I'll tell you, I don't remember seeing a player more overmatched at the plate. Via a strikeout was the ultimate result of that at bat. And I was really disappointed because this was a guy that was showcasing good power in the minor leagues, kind of really falling in line with the Christian Encarnacion Strands or the Pete Alonso profile. And then from 2022 to now, this season, he almost lost 2023 as a kind of a forgotten prospect. So I think this is definitely post-hype possible breakout. What are your thoughts on?
I definitely agree. Definitely a post-hype possible breakout. And I say this, and I'm very high on Vientos, but I can view the rest of this season and kind of going into next season similarly to how we viewed Spencer Torkelson this preseason, as in prime breakout candidate coming off a 30 home run, 90 RBI season. That's what I can see for Vientos. And just some things I posted this on the 26th. His barrel rate is nearly doubled. His expected batting average is up almost 70 points. His strikeout rate is cut nearly in half, and his walk percentage is almost tripled. I think the upside is there, especially with the power that he has now that we're seeing a much better approach at the plate and he's making more contact. His savant page, as Doc mentioned earlier, is bright red. One thing that is worth noting, his average exit velo isn't that great. It would, I think, qualify. And I think the bottom 3% of the league if he was qualified. But I mean, the bat speed is there, the barrel rate's there, the hard hit is there, and overall, I do think there's a lot to like about Vientos, and he's got a clear path ahead of him so long as Beatty is in AAA to regular everyday playing time, and I'm excited to see what he can do with it.
Want to feel better about it? Last year in the much bigger sample size, 92.5. It's one of the highest exit velocity averages in the whole league, even during his struggles. And the year before that, 2022, 93.3 average. So that. This is exciting, especially as you mentioned. Thank you for mentioning the approach, the walks, and the lack of the strikeouts, because that's the bread and butter. That's kind of why it's happening.
It's development, right? When you brought up the exit velocity, and Doc, you brought up you guys talked about the approach there. That's probably what I'm seeing within the stat line, is that maybe the exit velocity is down just a little bit because he is changing his approach, right? He is developing as a player at the major league level. We're starting to see that in the stat line. We will probably see those exit velocities go back up throughout the rest of the season if that breakout that you talked about with the potential Torkelson label on it happens. We'll see things stabilize, but we'll only continue to see his numbers get better. Hopefully, right? All right, so we have two buy players, Detmers, Vientos. I think both players are very acquirable too, as of today. You said it, maybe tomorrow not so much, but definitely two good player profiles this week. We are going to jump into the final segment of our episode this week. And we're going to hit a little bit on a couple of the articles that you've written about, Doc. We are going to hit on a couple of guys that we have already talked about this season ad nauseum, but we're going to get Owen's opinion. Then we're going to sprinkle in some guys. So, Owen, I want you to kind of kick it off. This segment is based around, I guess we would say, complex or A-ball players that you're excited about, or just a couple players that may even be in AA that are really catching your eye.
Yeah, so I'll start with complex guys. There's actually quite a few guys in the complex league I really like. I'm going to start off with one that isn't really talked about so much. Is, I believe, the number 26 prospect for Milwaukee, Filippo Dituri. He's shortstop, second baseman. $1.3 million signing bonus during the 2023 period, and he's now hitting 412, 583, 627 with a 1210 OPS in the complex league. Very contact first guy, virtually nothing for power, but his approach, very advanced approach, and that's kind of this. Although the no power is somewhat discouraging, it's a really strong basis for at least how to give you an idea of how he may continue to develop. When you see a guy at that level, only 18 years old, who's just virtually, I believe his walk rate is like a healthy percentage higher than his strikeout rate, and making contact at the level that he's at. He's a guy that I really like a lot. Coming up, I do think that having just that strong approach is going to translate into the upper levels in the minor leagues, and the power might come to maybe low double digits as he continues to develop.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought him up. I'm a Brewer fan, Owen, and from Milwaukee, the area of Milwaukee. I live in Vegas now. And they have a number of kids in DSL and in Complex that are incredibly exciting. I don't know what their scouting unit is doing, but that's an organization that I think everyone needs to monitor right now.
Absolutely.
Because they have some people that should be poached immediately. And I'm on the kind of the opposite opinion of people, that I don't think this was David Stern's work. I think this was kind of a team effort, and the team effort is continuing to have success without him. It will be interesting.
I think you have to look at really their entire organization as a whole. Dituri is really one of many of their high contact, low power, solid approach guys that they have in the minor leagues. You see this as well with Luis Lara, Dylan O'Ray, Mike Bovey. It's almost like they kind of have a profile of hitter that they want. So it's that they draft and they sign that already kind of have a solid approach, good contact skills, and they kind of bank that the power will come on later in development. And I think it's a really interesting strategy. There's a lot of high upside players in that system because of it.
Well, and then Doc, they go out and draft in the first round last year. Brock Wilken,
right? They build him because they have this crazy big hulking slugger who kind of mixed results so far. He got his face bashed in. We'll wait another month. But yeah, then to surround him with these safe, solid guys, it makes sense if you think about it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and Doc and I have talked a lot. I think we feel like coming out of Wake Forest junior year stats, yes, he may be a swing and miss, problem. He might be, but there's also the avenue that he might have had an approach change his junior year, and we might be able to see, not necessarily the 25% strikeout guy a lot of are expecting. We might see a 22% strikeout guy, and with that ability at 22%, he will be driving in the players that you just highlighted. I
yeah.
do think I think that's an option. I don't necessarily think it's the most likely option, but I do think the book is still out because of the injury that Doc mentioned.
Yeah, and another complex guy that has really caught my eye, Robert Kalaz, outfielder with Colorado. He was one of the top 32nd ranked international prospect during the 2023 signing period, signed with the Rockies. The raw power that I've seen from him, it's just I don't think I've really ever seen this before from an international prospect outside of Los Del Montes. And you pair that with he's got I can see average to above average speed. Think Jordan Alvarez with speed. That's what I get from Robert Kalaz. He's doing very well in the complex league right now. I believe 373, 448, 745, the 1.193 OPS. He's got average exit velos of 107 miles per hour as a 17-year-old from the DSL. I think this is just insane raw power. The defense is a bit of a question, but I think he's going to profile as a power speed guy coming up, and just very interesting prospect, very high upside prospect. I don't say this lightly, but I think there is superstar potential with Robert Kalaz.
Oh, that's a big stamp. And I like that. I haven't done enough on Kalaz to be in agreement or disagreement with you, but their scout won Scout of the Year last year. So, baseball obviously
Yeah.
rewarding him as the number one I think he was the number one international scout. We would have to cross check that. But there's a number of names the Rockies have really hit on internationally. Hidalgo won DSL MVP last year, is not doing well in complex. Hopefully he can turn that around. But you also have, the plethora of players from well, who am I looking for here with the AA affiliate?
Adael Amador.
You have Almador as well. The outfielder, the lefty, that had strikeout concerns after entering
Beck,
AA last year. I want to say
Jordan.
Yorfran Medina, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
Oh no, Yankeel.
Yanquiel Fernandez.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doc.
I,
Yeah.
I think a lot of what people, even you go back to 2020 in 2021 when they signed Ezekiel Tavar and Adael Amador. Since then, they've had a really good track record of international signings. And
Yeah.
I think I think part of it is the Colorado market. We tend to really not give the same level of attention to their prospects that we do to those of a big market team. And because of that, I think a lot of their guys really fly under the radar. And then even when they truly do break on the scene, much like we've seen with Amador last year, you still probably classify as underrated.
Yeah, and I mean, I still hear it on podcasts. I still hear people discredit this organization because of what they've produced over the last 5-6 years at the major league level, as opposed to really looking at what is within the organizational ranks right now. And I always kind of turn my head because I'm like, well, that may not be the correct narrative, and I know that it's going to take a number of years for that to change, but we're seeing it right now. And you just talked about it with this profile. A superstar potential coming out of Colorado is the kind of fantasy player that we all need to target.
Absolutely.
A guy that only will benefit from having that environment, plus all of these really intriguing prospects already up at the major league level, having pushed their development. Doc, do either of the names, or even organizationally with Kalaz, catch your eye?
Well, I like Owen's confidence with it, but yeah, I mean, dude, you probably lost me and like half of our dummy listeners. I'm a dummy, so I don't know who these guys even are, man. Like
Yeah.
I've heard of the names, but like Matt said it. Matt said it the way you're supposed to say it. I don't really, I haven't really looked at him. I haven't done my work on him as much. I'm like, yeah, bro, don't really know. How do you spell
Well, dude,
Kalaz?
I
want to look him
couldn't.
up. How do you
Calaz. I couldn't acquire him this offseason after coming off of a really nice season last year. And it was kind of one of those things where I looked at his DSL numbers, and you can probably attest to this. I knew I wasn't going to be able to acquire him. He wasn't on wires. And at that point, if you are holding him to the point of potential superstar, I'm not trading him unless you come at me with probably a Yanquiel Fernandez type player that has some holes in his game, but immense upside.
Yeah,
Because I'm looking at these numbers that you just mentioned, right? 4 home runs, 3 stolen bases, the 3-4 was 6 or 7 slash line that you just talked about. I don't
yeah,
care that this is complex. This is his year 18 season. He won't be 19 until November 22nd. I mean, he's exactly, if not ahead of age to level, and I'm in. I'm glad you
yeah.
profiled him.
No, I'm
Yeah, me
actually
too.
very in as well, and I actually grabbed him off waivers in 2 Fantrax leagues I'm in recently. So not to rub it in, but he's still out there. When I did my piece on him, only 10% rostered on Fantrax. For comparison's sakes, some of the other top guys, Felny and Celestin is 25% rostered. So this guy, he's still flying under the radar. If he's there, pick him up. Pick him up. I am very confident that we are going to see him live up to the potential that I do think he could be a superstar. I don't really say that lightly, but I think if there is anyone that is going to break onto the scene and can live up to the expectations, it's him.
Well, and it's funny because you talked about Lazaro in the same vein. You talked about the Jordan Alvarez with speed. It was actually something I wanted to talk about today with this segment in general. Was I look back last year and there were a number of names that I was seeing coming out of the complex or even A ball that I was getting excited about. And this year I don't necessarily feel the same way, at least with the same volume of players that I could get excited about. Claus is definitely nice to add to the equation, but last year it felt like a plethora of riches. And coming into this season, I think a good amount of us was looking at Lazaro Montez as an opportunity for him to potentially follow in Junior Camanero's footsteps. And he has done a good job, at least, of trying to follow that role. But maybe Kalaz is Lazaro next year, right?
Yeah.
Where we saw it at least enough ahead to say, okay, this is probably with the exit velocities at 107.2 and 90th percentile. That is incredible for an 18-year-old. That's enough to just roster.
This is similar EVs to what Lazaro had in the DSL.
Mm-hmm,
By the way, this is
mm-hmm.
really not far behind. That's really the level that we're talking about here. Just insane raw power.
Yeah, my
Yeah, I just
FOMO
looked
has
at I
been
just looked
really
into him
upset
without we got to wrap this dude up, but I just looked into him. He's rostered everywhere in my
everywhere.
league. Somehow this is
Yeah.
just must be the Rockies thing. I somehow have blinders on.
Yeah, we have a number of names still to list. Doc, we want to get you in a little bit here. You and Owen wanted to have a conversation about Drew Thorpe, so we're going to hold that for just a few here. Are there any players that you wanted to highlight this week that we haven't beat a dead horse over the last couple weeks?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, just I'm not going to get into Christian Scott too much. The guy's been great. I think most people are aware of that by now. If you don't know about Christian Scott, you got a small. Here's the thing: there are shallower leagues. I'm not here to make fun of that. That's like a dude. That's a thing. Like I want our anyone
We're
who's
in one.
shallow.
We're in 11, man.
Exactly. Well, I mean, sometimes there's 10-man leagues. It's fun. It actually is once you're doing these like 30-man grinders. Sometimes it's fun to come back and do something really just like okay, cool. Everyone's a stud. Christian Scott, he's gonna be great. Montez, we talked about. Thomas White, go look into him, folks. He's great. He's Noble Meyer. I've talked about him on here before, but basically, he got picked not too long. I think it was the end of the first round, beginning of the second. It might have been one of those conditional kind of funny picks at the end of the first round, additional picks. But yeah, Thomas White, 6'5", lefty, I believe. He throws gas, has a starter's mix. He's doing well so far in his pro debut was technically last year after being drafted. Like I said, Noble Meyer, a lot of people know who he is with the Marlins organization. He was drafted earlier, but the signing bonus, like we were talking about with Aiden Smith, that's really that's where you can easily kind of hack the system. Don't look at draft slots. Look at signing bonus. That indicates often what a organ. I mean, put your money where your mouth is, right? That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so Aiden Smith that goes for, and yeah, with Thomas White, he's paid basically the same amount as Noble Meyer. So I'm like, okay, Meyer is in top 50s, ranked in like the top 50, top 40 on some lists. And I'm not seeing Thomas White anywhere, which is weird because they're kind of similar players. Like in terms of the outcomes are both very high upside. So I'd recommend go get him in deeper leagues. Of course, pitching prospects riskier. This guy was throwing 91 at 14 years old, so watch out. Might not be good for his health long term, but some guys can handle it. Someone I think we could I can see on our outline here, both Owen and I would like to talk about, is the professor, Kevin McGonigal, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
flex. Nobody really had this guy on their. Well, I shouldn't say that. He was on radars as like this deeper sleeper kind of guy. He was picked again with the 34th pick, I believe, something one of those funky first rounders by Detroit, and frankly, this kid's been putting up the numbers. If we just showed you the numbers he's been doing so far in A ball, you'd be like, oh, that's what Max Clark should be doing. That's what he's doing. And Max Clark's doing similar numbers, a little bit more speed, a little bit less ratios, actually. Kevin McGonigal is showing he is not only a talented elite hitter, but has a great approach as well. I believe he's walking more than he's striking out right now. It's fantastic. The big question. So basically, I had him at 85th overall in my offseason ranks. Baseball Prospectus, they actually had me beat 79th. Wow, those guys are good, huh? But I don't think anyone else was thinking top 100 for the kid. But the Tigers got a winner here, which is great because their offense, as we noted with Torkelson, is not looking super great. So upset about them losing Kerry Carpenter. I'm not even a freaking Tigers fan, but that's devastating. He's a good guy. My fantasy teams are very devastated. But Professor McGonigal, him and Max Clark, I think are going to be a dynamic duo coming up together in this organization, and it's really cool that they're both coming up literally together in Lakeland. Frankly, the way they're performing really well so far, they should be advancing at the same time. I think that would be cool to keep their chemistry. That was a lot of thoughts. What do you think there, Owen?
Yeah.
By the
so,
way, that's what happens when you keep Doc out of the loop for too long. He's gonna come at you with a rant.
Yeah. So I think it's like a lot of people forgot this guy was one of the best prep hitters in the 2023 draft class. And I think he's really just mashed. I think I looked at it today. I think he was hitting like 386 or something. And as you mentioned, great approach. This was just from a tweet I posted a few days ago. He had 18 walks to 14 strikeouts. So very good eye at the plate. I mean, even if he can't bring himself to hit for power, I mean, the contact and the approach, there's really a lot to like there. And I do think he's got really a good, solid floor as an everyday big league infielder.
Yeah, putting up a 355 average. So when it probably was just a day in between
Maybe.
you saw, which is, I mean, the guy's got a 345. Right. This is again at single A affiliate. The only thing I'll say about his profile that will interest me is the age to level. So he is in age 19 season. He turns 20 in August.
Get out of here.
I'm not going to knock him because Bobby Witt this was a profile that I had concerns with Bobby Witt as well, right? And Bobby Witt smashed this profile for me. I would like to see him get a promotion to high A by middle of July. And I think where we stand right now, it's deserving probably this coming week.
Right now,
But Doc, you mentioned the pairing with Clark, and like I believe in developing chemistry early on. I saw it with a number of organizations when I was a kid, falling in love with baseball and what it did to the major league team when the kids came up, when that level finally became starters at the major league level. It matters. You can't quantify it with data, but it absolutely matters for these guys to have built relationships before they get to the show. So I would be interested to see if your dynamic actually plays into the promotion of Kevin or not. But definitely breaking out. And I think kudos to both of you for having him on the list. We got a couple more names from you, Owen. Did you want to just touch on these guys before we get into our final conversation about Drew Thorpe?
Yes. One more guy I would like to touch on, Christian Campbell. He is the Red Sox number 30 prospect coming into the season. 2023 fourth round pick out of Georgia Tech. And I mean, SoxProspects.com, which is a website that kind of covers Red Sox prospects, back earlier this spring, they had a guy who kind of predicted the Roman Anthony breakout and said he could see the same level of helium for Christian Campbell. I really don't think we're talking about this guy enough. He's hitting very well. Just came off a 32 game on base streak in Greenville, hitting over 300, 400 plus slugging, almost 600. 400 plus OBP, almost 600 slugging. The power's come along a bit too. 8 home runs, 25 RBIs, OPS just over 1,000. Just well-deserved promotion to Double A. he is striking out at a noticeable clip. That is kind of one thing that not quite a yellow flag. They did make some adjustments to his swing over the offseason, so I think that's more just kind of ironing out the bumps. But if he can put together the contact, the power, and improve upon his approach a little bit, he's touted as having a good approach coming out of college. I really think there's a lot of upside here. And I put him on my risers list. This guy was the 30th ranked prospect coming into the year. I think realistically, top 15 by the time midseason rankings come out, possibility he's even in the top 10.
Yeah, I think he's a name that definitely has been under the radar. It has not been talked about enough. And it's interesting because, you brought up his college pedigree. A lot of the guys that we saw really dominate after the draft last year coming out of college haven't come out of the gate as hot this year or even as warm this year. So it's nice to see Campbell enter into that that 2023 college draft prospect risers list because we just haven't had enough of them. This is a player I'd really like to see live. I'd like to watch tape. I'd like to watch a couple games of him play because the 3, 4, 5.5 line that he has is incredibly impressive when you talk about 47 strikeouts in 40 games. And in order to do that, I would have to imagine the exit velocity and his bat speed is probably plus plus. And that needs to go into the equation. So I think your riser
Yeah.
is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Okay, we're running a little bit long today. We're gonna finish it up.
Can we finish up on Thorpe?
Yeah. We're gonna finish up on
Okay.
Thorpe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Doc, you and I have talked at length about Thorpe. Owen, we love him, but it's easy to love. The numbers look really, really good, and you wanted to talk about him today. So I'm going to kind
Yes.
of pass it over to you. What is your profile? And I think I'm, catching on to what you're putting down here. What is your concern with Thorpe?
Yeah. So it's not really so much of a concern, more so something that held me back from putting on my risers list. Uh, MLB's top 100 right now. Let's see, where is he at?
I want to say
Okay,
if I
I
remember
can't.
Thorpe,
Yeah.
he's outside of the top 50 if I can remember correctly. I'll
Well,
pull
he's
it up.
he's 21st on the only list that matters. My off-season ranks
Okay,
for March.
he's number 54. So I'm not
Okay.
out on him. I'm not out on him by any means. I do think he's a very advanced pitching prospect. I do think he's going to be, the second or third guy in a big league rotation. But one thing that you really just can't ignore, his K per nine last year with the Yankees, 13.05. This year, 8.17. His walk rate last year, 1.48, 2.67 this year. So that's like two things to me that it's not like an end all be all for a pitching prospect, but I see that and I'm like, okay, maybe they're a little less dominant than the numbers would suggest. So I'm still very in on Drew Thorpe. I do think he is going to be a solid big leaguer, although I really don't see how much higher this guy is going to move. I don't really, and I think you look at really some of the other pitchers that are going to be on the rise come the next ranking. Caden Donna, for one, a guy I really like. Luis Perales, I do think they're going to be bigger movers. I can see maybe a little bit of a bump for Thorpe, but I do think he's not striking out as many guys. He's walking more guys. It's at the very least something that's going to hold him back from, I think, a big jump in the rankings.
Doc, I think Owen brings up a really interesting point here because I don't know that we've ever actually talked about the profile in which we expect Thorpe. We like the prospect, we like the numbers, we've talked the changeup, we've talked the White Sox, but I agree and have always agreed, I guess, with what you just said, Owen, and I want your opinion, Doc, because my big take for why I like Thorpe is because for me, out of all the pitching prospects that I have ranked in my top 100, I actually think he is the safest after Paul Skeens, and that's why I like him and have ranked him. It's not even necessarily the strikeouts because changeup dominated last year at low levels. What are your thoughts, Doc?
Well, I mean, I'm not super worried. I there. Let's look at last year's audition at Double A. Right, 30 innings is not nothing. I mean, for some of the top prospects out there, that's it's all they can do in a season half the time. He had a 13.1 K9 and 1.5 walks per nine. So yeah, those are coming back this year a little bit. Actually, no, I would say the strikeouts are substantially back so far. The walks are up a little bit. It's a smaller. It's 54 innings. We'll see what happens. At the end of the day, I guess what I'm trying to say is he's done it before at this level. That said, I don't really care because he's got a 1.33 ERA. And people say, "Oh, ERA is not a great indicator." I'm like, it's something when his his
Yeah.
entire professional career, his highest ERA was at high A last year. Funny enough, at 2.81. And his whip is unbelievable. I think this is really just a control wizard. We had Ryan Epperson on last week, and he did some great explanations on why Thorpe's repertoire works, and he was talking about the tunneling of the changeup and his fastball, and so somehow
Yeah.
he disguises them really well. It's tricky for hitters to get a handle on. I have said this, that we will find out only at the big leagues how his lower velocity repertoire pans out. That's the only reason I'm not like he's going to be skiing. It's like it's because I don't. That's a huge factor. That said, the best way to develop, it's by pitching more. And if you are not logging innings, you're not pitching more. And so he's the guy who's already done 150 innings last year. He's a
Yep.
guy who's going to be a 200 inning workhorse.
Yep.
I
You look at the guy; he's built like a tank. I'm wrapping this rant up because I do want to hear your counterpoint. And I want to say
Yeah.
one more thing. Something that was really concerning not really concerning, something that was really annoying for me from the White Sox is, why is this guy destroying Double A? I know Triple A people are knocking it, but still, I would think there are some better hitters there. Well, someone gave a good reason. I don't remember where I saw it, but they suspected that the Sox wanted him to practice throwing to Cuero. So they could you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
okay.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, what do you think, man?
Yeah.
I threw a lot at you there.
Yeah, so I think at the very least you look at he's still at the same level, and also Double A and where he was with the Yankees last year, that league is no joke. You've got some stacked teams up there, and now you kind of come into, I would say, a softer Southern league, and you see the strikeouts drop, the walk rate up. It's at the very least concerning. Maybe it's, like I said, not an end all be all. I'm still high on the guy. I would agree that he does have a very high floor. I think, and that you're looking at a second or third option in a rotation, but it raises eyebrows at the very least. It's almost something you look at and you're like, well, it's at the same level. I think I would take the Eastern League over the Southern League any day personally. Uh, it's against some teams that maybe just don't have the best farm systems, and it's at the very, it's almost like what's changed almost, like our hitters starting to figure them out a little more. Is it's interesting, and I do think I would, like I said, I would agree with the floor part, but it's something that it sticks out almost.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say that it looks to me like he's. I'm reading this big game log right now. He's never walked more than 2 players in a game this year. So I'm still like not freaking out. But hey, man, it's good to raise these points because yeah, me and Matt will talk how much we love Drew Thorpe all day.
Well, and I think you're bringing up a really good point because we we often forget to really say, like, what we think the high 90th percentile outcome is. Doc, you and I have said, I think best case scenario is Zach Gallen, and the
Mhm.
likelihood of that is it's 90th percent or 100% outcome. Like, it's not likely. That's what we think he could be, right? And Gallen has shown
Yeah.
to be that kind of a player. I wrote some notes down while you guys were talking. Double A, another thing that we talked about last week actually was the ABS and Triple A. Could be the thing. Now, Owen, I am not as in on the minor leagues as it sounds like you are, so I want to ask you that before I move on to the next point. Is ABS in every single ballpark in AAA, or is it just league specific? Do you know?
I believe ABS it's been tested in the minor leagues since I believe 2022. So I think this is the third year they've had it tested in the minor leagues. I'm a big proponent of ABS.
Okay.
I think it is something that needs to be brought to the big leagues, especially when you look at just how bad umpires have been. I'm a big fan of it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's just like a AAA thing. I haven't seen it in any of the Texas League, the AA games that I've
Okay.
been at. So I wish I could give you a better answer on that, but
No,
I
no,
know
and then that's curiosity.
it's been around for a few years in the minor leagues. I do know that.
I'm gonna research it this week, and we'll have it on next week episode. I'll give everyone the breakdown of what's going on with ABS. I think that could be a reason why Thorpe's not a AAA. He is more of a control pitcher. Maybe they don't want to completely throw him off his developmental track because, hey, now you have to have a computer tell you to pitch differently.
Yeah.
Cuero, I think, is good. I think organizationally, right? He's with the White Sox. formerly of the Padres, formerly of the Yankees. Obviously, we can cross the Padres out, but organizational differences. Maybe they're having him work on things, right? We hear all the time how like don't
Yeah.
focus on the ERA, don't focus on the WHIP because we're having him throw a changeup 80% of the time to learn a changeup. This would be a
Yeah.
different prospect, obviously. I think secondly, you may have mentioned it. This is his second time at AA, but when I look at last year at AA, a lot of guys got promoted. A lot of movement was going on end of the season. Also, people didn't have a whole lot of tape or scouting report on Thorpe, so he was dominating. I think there's a lot of reasons to fall into your
Yeah.
argument, but I think there's a lot of reasons to why we like him. And finally, to wrap, I want to get your thoughts on Hurston Waldrep, because up until about a month ago, Waldrep's strikeouts were massively down as well. Here he is this week dominating AAA.
Yeah. So I say this as a Waldrop owner. He has been very hittable. I think I was looking at that. That's kind of one thing that to me has kind of stood out from just some of the other prospects. Let me pull up his game log real quick.
He's
He's got a
over
nine,
the
nine,
last. Go
nine
ahead,
and a
Doc.
half, 9.5 hits per 9 was in AA, and yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah. His last 10 starts, 57 hits and 55 innings pitched. In those starts, he's given up three. He's given up three or more walks in three of them. So that is kind of somewhat concerning to me. I do think I still like him. He's got just a nasty splitter. The arsenal's there. He's in an organization that has had a long track record of success with developing arms. But at the very least, I do think there is some distance between him and that elite tier of arms that we talk about. With I think you can put even with Snelling's early struggles in AA, I'd still put him on there with Skeens, Job, Horton, Misiorowski, Thorpe. I do think there's a gap there. He's been hittable. The walks, he's shown just shown a tendency to just give out some free passes every once in a while. I still like him. Still very in here. Still, I've kind of let my league mates know I'm very hesitant to trade him. I think he's got some great upside, and he's striking out. He's still striking out guys a lot, which is good to see. But at the very least, there are some things there that he needs to iron out. He's like I said, he's been hittable and he's given up some walks. So those are kind of two things just to look out for. I do think he'll be up at some point late this year, so it'll be interesting to see how he fares.
Doc, to finish off, what are your thoughts? Owen just said he has Thorpe higher rated than Waldrep, and I actually like that you said that, because I am going to be making that adjustment myself, which I didn't from a stuff perspective. I didn't think I would do. Doc, how do you feel about Waldrep kind of in comparison to Thorpe and just what I had brought up, which was Waldrep's strikeouts have been down this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really weird situation. I mean, we'll find out when he gets to the bigs, because the Braves are not scared to throw you into that fire. If you're killing it, they're going to put you up and see how you can help the big league team, and the big league team could use some help right now. Yeah. So it's weird. Yeah, his numbers are really weird. So in AA, geez, I didn't even notice that at first. So it's only been 6 innings of the AAA. That makes more sense. I was like, what's going on here? He's a 4.5 ERA, but he's got a 16.5 strikeout per 9. Yeah,
it was a good bad start. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So 6 innings. Yeah, it's getting later here. No. So AA, people are saying more and more that AA is actually trickier than AAA, and I think that's probably an overgeneralized statement. I mean, there's guys like Jackson Holiday hanging out at AAA, so that's not 100% true, regardless. But
well, the age has gone up though, so I think like AA now is like 23, 24 years old is like the average age there. So that's I think that's kind of how you've seen those two mesh, and that AA is a bigger task is because the age of AA is and the gap between that and AAA, the age difference there has closed in recent years.
Yeah, well, there's that might be in part to something else, another facet, without getting too deep into this, because there's a whole nice article out there. I believe it was on The Athletic. It was about what's the difference between AAA and the majors. Why is it so clearly it's bigger than ever before? And there's a whole bunch of reasoning. And some people were saying, well, these teams are less likely to hold on to these quad A type of guys or these old vets and keep them at AAA. And so maybe that's a reason why you're seeing the age at AAA going down is because these older guys aren't there. And frankly, that's kind of helpful to have those old vets there. The old vets know how to hit in the big leagues to some extent. They've seen it at least. And so when the kids, the prospect pitchers, come up to AAA, when they see these vets and they see a Rowdy Tellez down there, or something like that, some guy just hanging out, it can be tough, right? And it's a good way to learn. That said, I mean, I think the other thing in terms of AA maybe being a better testing ground than ever before, is because some teams are being very aggressive. And I would come back to Thorpe on this one because I've been perplexed. He was on the fence of he was competing, according to some people, for a Padres rotation spot. I'm like, well, the Padres are great. He's the ace now in Chicago, right? Like, is this not how logic works? And Chicago said no, and their reluctance to move him up, even though he's almost got a sub. He's getting closer and closer to a sub-1 ERA. It's getting silly in AA. Well, yeah, I think that they showed Brian Ramos was struggling in the minors, and they threw him up to the bigs, no problem. They play some weird games. They do some weird stuff. I don't know if they're necessarily worried about Thorpe doing well. I think there must be something to this Cuero situation. And with Waldrip, he's just the anti-Thorpe, where I just feel so confident Thorpe is going to not let you down, basically. He might not be a Cy Young winner, but he's not going to let you down. Whereas Waldrip, he's just one of those guys, which is so many of our pitching prospects these days, which is like, could be amazing, might
Could
be
be
just be
droppable.
he might be a lights out reliever. That's the nice thing with some of these
Good
guys.
call.
Yeah. I would actually agree spot on with that assessment. I do think that when you look at it from a ceiling perspective, Waldrop does have the higher ceiling than Thorpe. But when you look at it from a floor perspective, there's definitely some question marks. Is the command going to force him to the bullpen? It could.
Yeah.
Is he going to be too hittable to be a dominant force in the rotation? It's at the very least, the questions are they're justified.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a number of those guys, right? AJ Puck, is probably the most prominent one that has bounced back and forth. And Waldrop being a first-round pick, they're going to give him the opportunity, and they're going to need him. We have Fried hitting the free agent market this year. We've seen the injuries. It's definitely going to have a boat of opportunity, as you had said, Owen, probably later this season, even if it's in a long relief role, which I continue to encourage teams to do. Bring these kids up, let them get their feet wet, let them get their confidence up, then transition them into the rotation, right? We've seen it with Garrett Crochet, even though he came up briefly before Tommy John was required out of Tennessee, but it worked. Ronaldo Lopez, right? How many seasons was he in the bullpen because he just couldn't stick as a starter, and he's sub-2 ERA for Atlanta this season. We need to see more of this. This was the old progressive path for success at the major league level. Even Nolan Ryan had time in the bullpen.
Yeah, one thing also to point out on Thorpe too is you look at where the White Sox are in terms of contention. This is not a contending year for them. You look at where the Braves are; they are very well one of the front runners for the NL East, even without Ronald Acuna Jr. So I don't think from you look at where they're at. I think it makes more sense for the White Sox to still preserve Thorpe's prospect status, not start his service clock until later in the year. They've already admitted there's a possibility he could pitch at the big league level this year. So there's also a possibility he skips AAA entirely. But I do think we're going to see. I think we're going to see Waldrop up first. I would think, realistically, maybe July, August, and I think Thorpe maybe cup of coffee in September.
Yeah. I just want to say we're forgetting maybe one of the coolest, starting his career out, helping out in relief in the playoffs. Adam Wainwright, all the way through to the win in the World Series, saving games in the World Series. So
damn, Doc, it's a throwback. You're making me, you're getting me in my old school days.
And now that we're talking about it.
Yeah,
buddy. That's before you were born. No, I don't know. 2006. It was close, right? Was it when were you born?
I was born 05.
Okay, so you were there. You remember it. Yeah. Well, hey, and for just closing off on that, take a look at Adam Wainwright's K9 throughout his career. Drew Thorpe's the next Adam Wainwright. We got a ridiculous short coming up. All right.
To finish, I could see Chris Getz, White Sox general manager, his assistant, knocking on his door and being like, "Sir, yes, it's time. Like Drew Thorpe's ERA is now 0.98. You kind of have to call him up. You did say when it dropped
Yeah.
below 1, but you raise a great point, Owen. The White Sox aren't going anywhere, right? The Braves are.
No.
Guys, go ahead, Owen. We'll finish it off for me.
Yeah, and I think, the White Sox, they could look at this more as not even just a bridge year, but a long-term project. I'm not saying it happens. You could see Luis
Yeah.
Robert out the door.
Yeah.
They could look at this as more like a 2-3 year rebuild more than like a bridge year.
And it probably should be, right? Like
It probably should be.
yeah.
I mean, you look at all the bad contracts they have to get rid of. No one's taking Benintendi without a prospect or a desirable prospect for that matter attached to it. So I do think there's going to be a lot more activity, maybe even as soon as the deadline.
Yeah, we could probably go all day on this. Guardians getting the number 1 overall pick. You have Walker Jenkins coming with Minnesota. So you have organizations around you in the division probably already ahead of where you are with that top elite talent, and you have been rebuilding, longer and failing at it. So the White Sox are definitely an organizational look. We're going to have to reassess at the end of this year. I think Chris Getz has done a really good job with his current tender. He's
Yeah.
going to have a lot of work left to do. Drew Thorpe obviously is under his control, so he gets to say. That's it, guys. We could continue to talk all day. This was an awesome episode. Owen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, we did too. Doc, what do you got for us?
And I just wanted to say that I'm your Huckleberry.
We'll see you next week, guys. Bye.